Santiago Errejón, political scientist and member of Parliament for Sumar, and Oliver Rothig, Regional Secretary at the European Services Workers Union. A big round of applause for them, please.
All right, it's lovely to see all of you here in Madrid talking about social justice and the green transition. And in this plenary, I would like to pick up the thread from the previous session we did yesterday on green and social investments and, of course, job creation. So I think we all agree that greening the industry, that really offers opportunities to reform our labor markets in order to improve the working and living conditions of millions of people in Europe. We call that quality jobs. But the question is, of course, what do we mean by a quality job? And what do we need to do to make sure that the green jobs that we are all wanting to create are actually quality jobs? So I have dedicated an own initiative report in the Ample Committee in the European Parliament that is specifically on this question, that explores the concept of a quality job from multiple perspectives. So for me, a quality job that contributes to the well-being of our people and of the planet. It provides decent and stable and long-term employment, adequate social protection, sufficient incomes, health and safety at work, decent working conditions with respect for workers' rights and workers' participation in the decisions that affect their lives. And when it comes to wages, for instance, we've witnessed how the wealth in Europe has doubled in the past 2 decades, while the real wages have actually declined. And it's time for workers to get their fair share. Now, for a long time, European businesses have actually tried to compete globally through cutting the wages and cutting the social security contributions. And I think yesterday's plenary showed very beautifully how Spain has managed to turn the table there. It can be different. You can do it a different way, and it can be good for the economy and for the workers. Now, annually, we do in the European Union still deplore about 3,300 fatal accidents and 3.1 million non-fatal accidents in work. 200,000 workers still die each year from work-related illnesses. I think we need to strengthen the European framework for health and safety at work as a part of the European Pillar of Social Rights. The mentioned figures, they don't even include the mental burden, the stress at work, nor do they cover the new and emerging risks like the impact of climate change and the digitalization at work. So what we really need to do is to adjust the labor market to the challenges of the 21st century and to protect workers from these newly emerging risks. And let's be very honest with ourselves here. The transition will indeed create jobs, but it will also result in regional, sectoral, and temporary job losses. And to bridge those time gaps and sometimes geographical mismatches in job loss and job creation, we need strong safety nets in all the regions and member states to complement job creation with measures like an adequate minimum income, adequate unemployment benefits, and minimum wages. Good working conditions, by the way, are not only an advantage to the workers. it's also very important for the employers. I think Eurofound showed it very beautifully in their report. The labor shortages are particularly prevalent in those sectors with poor job quality, with challenging working conditions, and with gender segregation. And many companies actually testimony that a lack in workforce is impeding their businesses. So if employers want to remain attractive, they do need to offer attractive conditions and stable contracts. Another aspect is, of course, skills. It's the European Year of Skills. We need to mention that upskilling, reskilling, lifelong learning, they will be crucial in the green and social transition. So in order to get the labor market ready for this transition, there will be the growing need to provide education and training in areas linked to skill gaps in the current labor markets and, of course, the future-oriented sectors. So the question is, how can we actually ensure that skilling the workforce will not only benefit the employers? Because we can't accept a skills agenda that is only capital-driven. Social dialogue, collective bargaining, social partners, they will be key in the design of all kinds of skill strategies. And as Greens, we advocate for an individual right to education to be reflected in every company strategy as well in all EU and national environmental policies. And such a right to training that should include a paid educational leave to make sure that the training doesn't impair the workers' rights to rest or to their salaries. Last but not least, and it was also said in the plenary of yesterday, we need to make sure that public money is not used for the deficit of workers. We're talking about public procurement here. A lot of testimonies have been collected by trade unions where we see, for instance, cleaning personnel having to buy their own equipment or not even getting a wage that is enough for them to live on. So we need to make sure that public money only goes to those companies that do respect workers' rights and that offer decent working conditions. Voila, that's enough for me. I think it's important that we look at how that actually works in reality. What does that look like for workers? What does it look like for trade unions? And for that, I'm very happy. We have a wonderful panel here with you today to get some input and to get some testimonials. We will do that in 2 sessions. So in the first, we will really get the voice of the workers. What are the everyday challenges that they face at the workplace? So there indeed we will be joined by Abass Echmouti and by Juan Carlos. In the second segment, I'd like to discuss some of the policy solutions with some key policy makers. And there we'll be joined by Ivalio Calfin, by Inigo Errejón, and Oliver Rudik to make sure that we know what we actually need to implement when it comes to the policy side to create these quality jobs. All right, but like I said, enough for me. Let's listen to the workers. So Abass Echmouti and Juan Carlos Soriano Fernandez, please come to the floor so we can hear your testimonials. Thank you. All right. Let's start with you, Abass Echmouti. You work in the agricultural sector, are also a trade union delegate. Can you tell us a bit more about who you are, where you're from, what kind of work do you do, how did you actually get into your current job?
¿Y cómo consiguió su trabajo actual?
Okay. Me llamo Abass Echmouti.
Yes, my name is Abass Echmouti. I am from Morocco, but I'm a Spanish citizen.
Bueno, estoy trabajando en el campo
I work in the agricultural sector,
os contaré, pues,
and I'll tell you a bit more about me in a second, I guess.
y os
Oh yes,
contaré
I can carry
cómo
on, okay.
es mi día laboral
I'll tell
en
you
el
how
campo.
my day-to-day life is in
¿Me
the
hacéis
workplace.
preguntas?
Do you have any other questions?
I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not getting a translation. Maybe the problem is the microphone?
Parece ser que hay un problema con el micrófono porque no estoy escuchando el intérprete.
Let's just continue. Maybe to ask, how does getting your job
Vamos a
through a
seguir.
labor intermediary influence actually your working conditions?
¿Cómo su actividad sindical influencia su trabajo?
Pues, pues colaboran muy bien.
Trade unions collaborate with us. We tell them our problems, our
You
everyday
need to
problems.
speak into the microphone, please, otherwise we don't have translation.
Hable por el micrófono, por favor.
Están día a día con nosotros, explicamos
trade unions
nuestros
work with
problemas
us
diarios
on a day-to-day
y lo que
basis.
podemos solucionar
We
lo
tell them
solucionamos,
our
y lo
issues,
que no se puede, pues lo
and we
estamos
try to
intentando.
fix whatever we can.
Sorry about the technical issues.
No problem.
Disculpe por el problema técnico.
No problem.
No problem.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit what
¿Puede,
your typical work week
por favor,
looks like to make it more
contarnos
concrete
cómo
for
es
us?
su semana laboral?
Vale, pues
Sure.
me levanto por la buena mañana
I wake up
y
early in the morning
sobre las 7
at around 7 a.m.
De la mañana y vuelvo a las 7 de la noche.
and I go back
Si el
home at
trabajo
around
está
7
cerca,
p.m.
entre 10 y 30 kilómetros.
My journey to
Si
work
está más lejos,
is
puedo levantarme a las 5 y vuelvo a las 8 de la noche.
relatively close, but when I work further
Por
away,
supuesto esto,
my working hours are longer, of
todos los
course.
días de la semana.
That is the case
Sobre
for
todo si no
every
llueve.
single day, and especially if it's not raining.
Por las horas que trabajo, pues
Regarding my working hours,
por las horas que trabajo debería de ganar más
I think I should be paid
y no es el caso.
a lot more, and that's not the case.
¿Cómo se afecta el aumento de coste de vida? Si consigo un aumento de salario
The cost
del
of life
2%,
is
la
really
siesta
affecting me
aumenta
because
el
if my
30%
salary
porque mi siesta
rises
no lo
2%, but the
puedo
cost of
utilizar
living rises
para la ETC,
30%,
que
that's
me
not
afecta muchísimo.
enough for me, and
Todos los días
it really
tengo
affects
que decir que
my
es la prioridad,
life.
la prioridad.
I have to
la prioridad.
prioritize what I do
Le
with
queda
my
tiempo suficiente
salary.
para mi le que- Thank you. Le queda tiempo suficiente para su amigo, su familia.
I don't
después
have
del
enough
trabajo.
time for my
Sí,
friends,
el
for my
verano cuando no
family.
tengo trabajo.
Well, yes,
Y aquí
over
mi
the summer
trabajo
because
es
I'm
temporal.
not working,
Estoy activo
because
si es poca
my job
de la
is
recolección.
temporary and I'm
¿Qué
only
mejoras
active
cambiaría
when
tu vida?
there is a need. So what would improve
Que no
my
existieran
life?
los intermediarios laborales, entre comillas, la ETT.
Well,
que
direct
disminuyen mis
clients
ganancias.
would have a great impact on my everyday life. I would like to work directly for the company. The company should work with their staff, with 70% of their staff, right? And there are fines if these agreements are not met. But do we really monitor these agreements? We should come up with new tools, new solutions so that my workday is not as tiring. We work with very heavy machines, devices. We suffer a lot on our everyday life when we work on the fields collecting oranges, and there's a lot of suffering that is not valued enough. Let me tell you a short story. In 2003, I was working on a temporary basis, working in the clementine fields. At first, we were 25 workers. It started raining one day. That day, the rain was very, very heavy, and so we had to stop working because of the rain. Suddenly, the boss arrived, and he forced us. He screamed at us, and he said, "If you're not working today, there's no point in you returning tomorrow. You should find another job." And he said that under the rain. Trees were soaking wet, and we had to keep working, but the fields were not ready for us to work. There were droughts everywhere. Floods everywhere. We had to work in very poor conditions. That day, there were a lot of casualties in the work fields. Next day, half of us were sick, and they were fired. They were not allowed to return to work. I was very lucky. I didn't get sick, and I was able to carry on working. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that testimonial. I mean, I think for us, that makes it very concrete when we say we want to fight for better working conditions, for better wages, for you to be able to spend time with your family, to not have to worry at the end of the month, how are you going to pay your bills? I mean, I'm sure that a lot of us don't realize when we are eating mandarins or oranges that this is actually at the base of the work that is needed. So I think it's extremely important for us here as civil society, as politicians, to hear this kind of testimonials, because we, in that sense, really know what we are fighting for. And what we're fighting for is for you to have those decent working conditions, and for stories like the ones that you told today, that it can never happen again.
Thank you, gracias. Gracias, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much.
We also have Juan Carlos Soriano Fernandez here with us. You are a construction worker, and you're also active in the occupational safety and health part of your company, if I understand it correctly. Can you tell us also a little bit about what kind of work that you do in the sector of construction?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Carlos Soriano. I am a construction worker and also lead the occupational safety and health department in a national company. within the construction sector, and I'm also an activist in the trade union Comisiones Obreras. I see that I can follow my script, so I will do so. I was sent a few questions that I will try to answer. We suffer from stress in our sector and from safety issues, and I think that we are all aware of these issues, and I'll try to provide some examples now. Unfortunately, there are health and safety issues on a daily basis due to the fact that this sector is very precarious. Production is the most important thing. It is more important than health and safety issues, and therefore we cannot really monitor what's going on in the workplace of these SMEs. SMEs are actually the most prevalent companies within the construction sector, and therefore it's difficult to implement health and safety issues properly. We don't have the tools, the legislation. Fines are not enough. Health and safety issues at work are not valued enough in our everyday life. In the long run, fines are really cheaper than dealing with these health and safety issues. Therefore, this construction sector is the one where work-related deaths are the highest. In 2023, there were 50,000 casualties reported. 600 of them were very serious. And there were actually, 80 people who died in the workplace. How does rising temperatures affect our workplace? Well, we might think that CEOs are taking measures with that regards, but that's not the case. Climate change is happening, is strong, and in our sector, over 60% of our tasks take place outside, so we are exposed to extreme weather phenomena, and that increases the risks. Well, luckily enough, government is trying to implement a new legislation to make sure that companies act with this regards. I think there is a law already in place, and within trade unions we work in that sense, and we want to add to this construction agreement, which was published a few weeks ago in Article 74, where an amendment was passed with regards to extreme weather phenomena in order to protect our workers, and we're trying to implement preventive measures also with regards to the working hours. In Madrid, for instance, we adopted 3 years ago a condensed work day over the summer, and this is something that we had fighted for many, many years, but that's not enough. It is implemented between the 15th of July and the 15th of August, but that's not enough because, as we know, due to climate change, summers in Spain are getting hotter and hotter. We are talking about summers that last over 5 months. So these measures were also implemented in other Spanish regions, 2-3 regions, but I think that this should be implemented at a national level because it is the case in the whole of Spain, really. Public administrations should commit to protect workers in their procurement plans and to monitor the implementation of such plans. These measures are not enough, unfortunately, because we are not following up on these measures, and we are letting CEOs take responsibility, which doesn't work in most cases. Our role as workers who care for health and safety issues, we try to make sure that these measures are implemented correctly. But negotiations are very, very tricky in Spain. Unless there is a binding law, well, they won't do anything. To the question if I have enough time for my family and friends after work, no, I don't.
National legislation to combat indeed these extreme working temperatures, do you think that if we would get it on a European scale, it would help you as well?
Legislation, well, we do have some laws, but we need these laws to be a bit more specific. We don't have tools that allow us to implement these laws. And that's not us, it's, well, the government. Inspections, the inspections department are overworked, and whenever I report on a case that is based on extreme weather conditions, well, that claim will take such a long time to reach the right people and to realize that the protocol has not been implemented. But by the time that happens, well, someone might have died already. So it's pointless.
Legislation, it also really needs to be controlled, if I understand it correctly.
Yes, that's correct. The issue that we face is to ensure that these laws, that this legislation is implemented correctly. We've improved over the years, that's true, and especially with regards to extreme weather conditions. But the issue, again, is that these laws are not implemented correctly.
To also know on European level, so the fact that there is already something in Spain can help to get it also in other member states, but we need to also take into account that that also means we need stronger control authorities to actually make sure that the laws are implemented. But maybe lastly, of course, everyone has been talking about the rising cost of living, of course. How does this affect you as a construction worker?
Well, I'm from Madrid, and the salary range varies depending on the region of Spain. In Madrid, our salary range is very, very low, almost the lowest within Spain, and we cannot really, we struggle to go through the month, really. A construction worker earns around 1,100 euros a month. So what's the issue with that? We have to work extra hours, we have to work extra hard in order to reach a decent salary that will allow us to pay our basic needs, and that involves working on bank holidays and working extra hours. So that's very, very tricky. We should adjust this salary range, and this is a request that we've made already with regards to the cost of living. Well, Madrid is one of the most expensive cities in Spain, along with Barcelona and Baleares. Rent here is very, very high. But for now, negotiations are not going anywhere because CEOs don't want to spend money, really. With regards to retirement, our sector is very, well, it's very demanding from a physical point. So we retire at 54, 55. But the thing is that new generations are not interested in these sectors. So us senior workers are trying to hold on, but it's very demanding from a physical point of view. Retirement is set at 67 years now. So can you imagine a 67-year-old worker in the construction field? So the issue is that because new generations are not interested in this sector, we are trying to hold on because we have no one to replace us. But otherwise, if you stop at 54, 55, it's very tricky to find a job at that age because you compete against young people. So that's another issue that we face, retirement age. So we want to retire a bit early in the construction sector. But again, we are not moving forward.
That's all we will have time for, but indeed, I think it's a very important point that you make. It's about, of course, the people that are now in the construction sector and making sure that we have a way for them to end their careers in health and in safety and not completely broken at the end of their career. But also, we need to make sure that those jobs for new people are more attractive for young people. And I guess that's also what you're saying. We need to get better working conditions if we want to have new, young workforce within the construction sector, right? Okay, I think for us, again, it's invaluable to have these kind of testimonials because it can really be a compass for us as policymakers to try and do everything we can to make sure that the laws are actually there to support you as workers, to make sure that the conditions that you have to work in are indeed safe, healthy, that you can have joy in your job instead of worrying about your health or worrying about the end of the month. And so it's really up to us as politicians now to take those testimonials together with policymakers, of course, and to make sure that, well, in the end of the day, all of those jobs will be healthy jobs, decent work, with a good salary for all. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was very, very helpful. So like I said, we will now go further in this session and really discuss the policies that we need to make sure that indeed these people are being helped with the troubles we heard today. And we have some very important speakers now to join us on that, but perhaps also for you already to notice, we have some green and some pink flags. Please keep them close to you because during the debate I might ask you some questions and we will see who within the audience actually agrees or doesn't agree. But for now, indeed, let's talk policy with Ivalio Calvin, with Inigo Errejón Galván, and with Oliver Rotig. Please join me on the stage. All right, Ivalio, can I start with you? I mean, we just heard a lot of struggles and challenges coming from our workers that are really impacting their quality of life. How does that situation actually look across the EU? Because of course we heard now a Spanish example, but is this really something that is a reality for all the workers in the Union? I mean, I think we know unemployment is less of a challenge than it was in the past, but has the quality of the jobs actually improved? I mean, what are the challenges there? What are the solutions that you see? And how can shoring up job quality actually address also the skills gap and well, the labor shortages when we're talking about the green and the digital transition?
Thank you, Sarah. Just 2 words to say why I'm speaking on these issues, and thank you for the invitation. I'm working, and I'm the director of one of the European agencies. This is the oldest European agency, practically, which is Eurofound, which is researching working and living conditions across Europe. So we have constant work on seeing how the conditions of work and the living conditions of European citizens are, what is happening with them. And I'm going to base my answer on the research that we are doing at Eurofound on that. I mean, it depends. You're asking how the working conditions are developing. In longer term, they're developing well. I mean, if we speak in the last 20 years, for example, working time was tremendously improved during beginning of between 2000 and 2010. Skills, especially ICT skills, especially after 2005, much more people already have those. The health and safety conditions are also improving, and the trade unions have a very important role in this. But this is long term. And then if we look, and by the way, also long term, we also see some negative developments. What we see is increased psychosocial risks, increased intensity of work, increased stress of the people at work because of various reasons, which is affecting also their well-being and their good performance, both at work and in the private life. But where is mostly the problem? This is what is happening in short term, because in short term, especially when there is a shock, when we had the COVID, the lockdowns, all this insecurity with that, then we had the high inflation that started with the Russian war in Ukraine, and we see that all these hits are practically increasing gaps. And here we shouldn't look at average figures. We have to look at those that are more vulnerable. Because as a result of these effects, we see that people are losing, especially some groups of people that are marginalizing. If you take the incomes, for example, and the inflation, before the inflation, after COVID, if there was something which was really very good at European level, this is the SURE instrument that protected the jobs. And unlike in 2008, much faster the economy.
Could you maybe, I'm not sure if everyone knows what the SURE instrument is.
The SURE is a massive instrument that was produced at European level. Practically the European Commission took a debt, gave it to the member states in order to pay jobs for locked businesses. In hospitality, in construction, in transport, when during COVID time people were not working. And in the different countries it was different, but mostly the countries were paying part of the salaries, part of the income in order to keep the people at work. This was a European program. So these were money that were borrowed by the European Commission, given to the member state in order to produce this. This kept the jobs, and this showed that the recovery is much faster than the recovery after the previous crisis in 2008. So this was positive. But then what we see is with the high inflation, since there was no such instrument, all the people in Europe, all the workers in Europe lost in 2022, in last year, their purchasing power. So European workers consume less than before. In 2023, again, due to the very active social dialogue and the legislation also at European level with the minimum wage directive, we have seen an increase of the minimum salaries. So these are not the average, but the minimum salaries at least. And in some countries like Belgium, Germany, the increase in prices was compensated for those receiving the minimum salary. But it was not everywhere. I mean, in some other countries, that was not the case. And in general, during the inflation, working conditions deteriorated, purchasing power deteriorated. To some extent, it was compensated at national level with some different social measures and social support, but that was not enough. So what we see is that we see a divergence between people, increasing gaps between different social groups. You mentioned skills. Skills in general, this is very important. Europeans are getting more and more skills, and the workers in Europe get more skills. But women are skilled less. People at lower skilled jobs are skilled less. So the higher your skills are, the more you go to training. Self-employed say that they learn more at work than employed people. We see in many companies that the employers do not provide, do not pay for reskilling of the workers. In many cases, we see that the workers don't have the time because of the intensity of work in order to get better skills. So we see that, okay, general skills are improving, but we see that there are people, and they have a very concrete profile that cannot benefit from that. So I would very much look at this disadvantaged groups, and this divide goes in terms of gender, in terms of urban-rural divide, and this is also what Juan Carlos mentioned about the construction sector, by the way. We see this divide going into different types of contracts, which is also very important. I mean, people with permanent contracts are skilling, going for skills much more often than people on temporary contracts or people on agency contracts. So this division goes on several lines, and we see groups in the society that are marginalizing.
Well, thanks. Maybe to, if you were following this, I'm wondering what you guys are thinking. Let's make a statement. And then you have the flags to say if you agree or if you don't agree. And of course, I think it's very adamant also in these times of a rising cost of living. So the statement that I would like to put forward, and I'm curious to see what you will say, is any job is better than having no job at all. Who would agree with that statement? Any job is better than having no job at all.
Difficult question. That's
a tough one. I see some flags. Who disagrees? I think that's quite clear. Now, of course, we're also heading towards a campaign, towards elections, and I think it's fair to say that right now the far right is really targeting the frustrations of working people to really increase their presence and their political outcome. I'm wondering if you have observed a relationship actually between the quality of the job and the support that people have for democracy.
Oh yes, and there is something that Oliver can speak much more on that, about democracy at work. So when you have democracy, it's a little bit everywhere. You cannot have it at work, but not at home, but in the society, but not on some other places. So either you have it, and it's developing, or you don't have it, and then it has the negative consequences. We started making an online survey during COVID, because it was not possible to collect data otherwise. And we continued with very interesting research and very interesting findings. For example, we all know that when people are living well, they have a good job, good salary, etc., they feel more satisfied from life, at work, etc., etc. When people are at stress, when they don't have a job, when they have insecurity, when they have problems to make the ends meet, and to pay the bills, to buy the food, the medicines for the family, to care about the elderly or the children, then they have much more discontent. But what we find is something very interesting. The link, for example, between the type of labor contract and the perception of politics. People on stable long-term labor contracts tend to have a higher trust in government and higher trust in democracy. I mean, basically, if you ask them, are you going to vote at the next elections? They say yes. 87% of them, they say, I mean, it's another thing how many go to the polls, but 87% say in Europe, they say we would vote at the next elections. For people at agency contracts and temporary contracts, this is 20% less. So 60+% say, yes, we might go to vote, but rather we are not going to vote because we don't trust the system. We don't think that this is going to change. What is the problem? The problem is not that they are not voting. Sometimes they are indeed not voting. But sometimes there, and this is what I mentioned, pockets in our society of vulnerable people, they're against the establishment. They are ready to destroy everything and to create whatever because they're not happy with what they see. And this is where right-wing appear. They don't bring solutions. I mean, if the solution is a long-term contract, secure job, good revenues, good work-life balance, then I don't hear the answers politically. But this is a destructive commitment to go and destroy this system because it's not good for me, I don't like it, so let's get rid of it. The problem is that what is coming, you have to know what is coming. I mean, it's not solving your problems. And this is only this parameter. We also look at other parameters, but about job security, we see that this is marginalizing people. These people are much more ready to destroy whatever is good or bad or whatever and start anew without knowing what is this new. And last thing on that, again, it is very important how the democracy at work works. Workers in companies where you have a strong social dialogue, where you have unions negotiating working conditions, wages, etc., you have much more people that are ready to participate in the democracy, in the democratic procedures, to go to vote, to listen to different opinions, to debate politically, to look for answers, etc. In places where you don't have social dialogue, you don't have social partners, you see people that they simply don't trust that anybody could represent them properly. And they tend to try to destroy what is there because they want something else without knowing what exactly is coming.
Well, thanks for that. I think it's very important for all of us to indeed know that insecure and precarious jobs can actually also be a threat to our democracy. It's not just about the workers' rights, it's really also about putting a dam against those extremities. Let me turn to you, Inigo, from SUMAR. You've been really at the forefront of combating that precarious work in Spain. I would love to have your take on this. So what kind of solutions do you think that we need to make in place so that people really can live a fulfilling life instead of just having to struggle for survival all the time?
¿It's on? Okay. Vale, muchísimas gracias por la...
Thank you very much for this question. And thank you so much to the different colleagues of the Green Social Summit for organizing this summit in Madrid and for inviting me. I'm going to divide my speech in 3 points, in 3 essential points, or I'm going to reflect on 3 core points. The political atmosphere, the roadmap, the road in which we are, means that we are living times of neoliberalism and in pessimism. It's different compared to the neoliberalism that was expansive, that promised everything for everyone. We're living a pessimistic neoliberalism that tells us that the future is complicated and that, of course, we're living some kind of fight between everyone. Therefore, there is an aggressive role and an aggressive partnership in which what they promise is that no one is safe. In fact, there is no way to save the planet, nor the people, nor anyone, but the most privileged ones, the privileged collectives, can live very well. And upon this offensive, it is necessary for the green politics to try and gather together and understand that we don't have to go back to the ancient, to the old pacts, because what is crucial is that we all have the capacity and the will to recover this initiative and to fight against this offensive. And what are these fights? These fights and these dialogues affect our daily lives. It is crucial, it is of most importance to open the discussion about the conditions, the daily conditions of everyone. And the time at our disposal, the conditions, the working conditions, the access to housing, the air we breathe, the food we take, and the right of living a life that has minimum life conditions of calm and tranquility. In any case, answering the question, what are the key factors to go against these problems so that people's lives are safe and sound? Firstly, it is important to name the problem. We have to make these inequalities the core of our speech. The first value of this war needs to be to go against inequalities because they threaten our daily lives, our calmness. We need to create power as well. And this power has two areas. We have to create institutional power. This was said before. Some colleagues were mentioning this from the agri-food sector and construction sector. Constructing and building institutional power is the tool to interfere in those cases in which the investment is creating some problems. Therefore, we are creating tools so that when there is a lack of, for example, inspectors, we can add in inspectors, but this has nothing to do with institutional force. It's all about trade unions. It's about improving in favor of the majority and of the working conditions and improving the different trade unions, for example, in the cases of the trade unions of tenders, trade unions of neighborhoods, so that they can interfere in the conflicts in favor of the majority, of the social majority. And this is a receipt for the government. It's not just something that has to do with progressive values, because we sometimes say that governments need to interfere so that we have better working conditions, better wages, better salaries, more time for workers. And this is true, of course, but at the same time, governments and administrations, where we arrive, we have an obligation. And this obligation, it's not about improving working conditions, which is also true, but we have to govern to increase the power of trade unions, of social unions, of ecological movements in order to interfere in the political movement. Where we are in the government, one of our tools and one of our duties is to leave more social power so that the majority can turn the balance to the rights of the workers, therefore to the freedom facing this liberty, this freedom of the politics that make this reaction. Therefore, those people that act with their lives, with their bodies, because they work with their hands, for example, can have rights in their future. And I'm going to take this opportunity to drink a bit of water. Thank you, sorry. Thirdly, it is of utmost importance to put in place political values that are facing our main fight. The main fight is against time and against land. This fight against time means that this predatory system in which we are stops destroying this dignity of the people in the planet. Nowadays, and it has always been like that, the social class fight, it is a fight for time. And this is something that millionaires know. And even though they know this, they want to work more, and they say, you're very lazy, you don't want to keep on working, but you try to speculate, you try to act in your name, and we want to guarantee the best for the majority. And I am proud of being part of a government, of a political force that opens a debate, an offensive debate, not to lose rights, but to gain rights and reducing working hours. And we want to reduce these working hours because this is good for the planet, because these slow lives would improve these ecological improvements as well, because this is good for work-life balance. And we speak about this reform of working conditions, but it's important to reform as well the entrepreneur system and the company system, because they try to invest more and more. They invest in people's training, and because it's good for democracy. My colleague was saying this already. It's all about working conditions, but about available time as well. Each time we study the participation, we discover, for example, the Mediterranean. We discover the best thing in the world. These are moments in which people are participating more, and therefore their interests are protected. However, those people that are working very hard and that cannot take care of even of themselves because they don't have enough money, their interests are damaged. We need political and social politics that guarantee certain rights, for example, that in health, education, in the caring system, in transport, in culture, what was before a privilege for those people that could pay for it, now it's a right just because of being a citizen. And this is a fight for wages, for salary, the possibility so that more areas of life have nothing to do with the money that people have in their pocket, but that have to do with this public provision and community policy. And this means to act in different areas of my life, but I'm going to just name two of them that are fundamental, especially in the Spanish state. For example, housing. Without interfering in the market and in the social blocks that are created in our country, all of this rising in wages are rising that are going to end up eating up this speculation. Therefore, what does this mean? This means precisely, and sometimes the socialists do not understand this because they're quite clumsy. We have to make the balance, because we have to stop this tender laws that takes away money from the employees and gives it to the landlords. This is a market that is not regulated. Well, yeah, it's actually regulated, but in favor of banks, of landlords, etc. We need to turn everything upside down and revert it for the best of the public, of the social workers. Basically, there is going to be a great difference because when the left wing is in the power, they just have one part of the power, and the right wing is always having this part of the social economic dialogue in its core. And we have to opt for this basic rent, this universal basic rent as a right. And I will end with this. We need this basic income, this basic rent, but we need to understand that this basic income is needed so that people and workers have freedom. Freedom is all about doing something that is not profitable. It is the capacity to say no to shitty employment, and sorry for the word, and this means right so that we can have better negotiations between workers, and therefore we don't want a low-cost economy that charges upon the people's backs this problem, this burden, and we need more added value, and we need to opt for knowledge, opt for education, etc. And I'm going to stop here. I was very intense. I will continue afterwards.
Thanks a lot, Inigo. And I think one of the ideas that you put forward, I would like to test here in the room when it comes to working time reduction. What does everyone think? Would, for instance, a 32-hour work week actually improve your life quality? Who agrees? And who doesn't agree? I think that's quite clear. Oliver, let me turn to you finally. I'm sure what Inigo said about strengthening trade unions and collective bargaining is right up your alley. But I'm also wondering, of course, next to that, well, you know that I agree, what can we do really as policymakers to make sure that the jobs of the future, but also the jobs that are already there, are in fact quality jobs?
First of all, let me start with congratulating you, especially Green Social Summit. I think we need a clear message that green and social goes hand in hand. You can't divide it. And what the right wing... And what the right-wing extremists, some governments, some companies try to do is divide this, saying green and social doesn't work together. And we have to fight this because then we all go under. As political groups, as trade unions, but as people on this planet. First. Second, when we look what workers want, they want respect. And respect means, in the first place, decent working condition and decent pay. And I just saw downstairs your campaign, decent pay now. This is really important. And decent pay today means actually more pay. We heard before why. The second point they want is they want to have real say. They want not only to be listened to, and too often they're not even listened to, but they actually want to influence things. And the third thing is they want freedom of fear. They want to have a perspective for their life. And for trade unions, of course, this is a question. The easiest tool is having collective bargaining. Bring them in. And collective bargaining, first of all, shows where you have collective bargaining, there's better pay, there are better working conditions. It also shows you can discuss about your future, and there we come back to democracy. We have seen in the last elections in Germany, trade union members, too many of them voted for the right-wing extremists, more than half of them taken altogether. When you only look at trade union members who have a collective agreement, it's much less. Collective agreements are supporting democracy, and I would even say they're a school of democracy, because people come together to make compromises among themselves, negotiating with the other side, and then have to go back and argue why the first compromise couldn't be held. We have now a new one. And then everybody rallies around it to make a better future. This is what we really have to do. And then we have basically the vaccination against right-wing extremism. So now when we look at what can you do, as a European Parliament, in the European election, as a European Union, but also as governments, empower worker and trade unions. And for us as trade unions, and that is our campaign at European level, no public money, you said it, no public money without working conditions and in particular collective bargaining. And I'm very proud that together with many of the Green MEPs, we push this campaign at the European level. We have already, in terms of collective bargaining, the success of the 80% target of collective bargaining coverage. That's thanks to the people in the Employment Committee of the European Parliament of the ETUC, but it's really a groundswell. And when I come to public procurement, what we see now is the Commission is not of the view that we should have regulation on public procurement at European level for collective bargaining. They can do this at national level. So next month, that's very soon, we come out with a paper, how green paved the way for social. And you see this already here. And when you see it in the back, it's basically green and a red hand joining. And the point is, when you look at green public procurement, The Commission is ready to intervene and have legislation pushing in this direction, and on social they don't. And I think for the next parliament, and that is key for the parliamentary election, do this. The best way to strengthen collective bargaining is really getting public procurement rules that work for workers, that bring collective bargaining. That we need to do, and I give you some examples why it is important. One, here in Spain, we have public contracts, and now we have a high level of inflation, and the employer said, we are really sorry, but we are fixed in the contracts for 4 years, so for 4 years we can't increase your salaries. Does this work? Second example. We have many global multinational companies in cleaning, in private security, who say, we don't want to have public contracts because the quality that we demand of ourselves, we cannot deliver with those prices. That doesn't really work. Or take Finland. There we have a situation where the cleaning of schools was privatized, and it goes to migrants, workers, very often, and they don't get enough money to actually have decent housing, and they sleep at the working place. Is this allowed? And the last one, which is really nice, not nice, I mean rather a point for the next upcoming European parliamentary election. We had a situation in Latvia last time where the government outsourced the balloting by the voting by letters, so by post. They didn't take the post office, but a small company, and then afterwards you found ballot papers in the garbage. Does this work like this? So it undermines the quality of services, it undermines wages and working conditions if you do like this. And we need empowerment. You basically have to make sure that governments, that local authorities have the power and the money to do this right. I think that is one of the key points we have to push. Let's make sure that public money we pay for goes to companies which are decent companies who have collective bargaining and good working conditions. And let me finish with the dimension. Here in the room, I don't know, we have 150 people or something like this, and in 100 people, there are 15 people who actually are paid through public procurement. So we have really leverage there. So let's use this leverage and make sure that we go forward. And one last thing, we have to make sure that legislation is about empowering people and trade unions, that is giving them collective rights. Too often, what we do as trade unions as well, but also governments and parties say, let's get another individual right. But an individual right doesn't really empower. It forces you to go to court, empower people, making sure that they can make their own decisions, and then they will also be behind democracy every day. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for all your very valuable inputs. I really liked the title of your paper, Green Paves the Way for Social, and I think that's really what we need to put in the forefront, that the green transition should be a lever for quality jobs, that there cannot be a Green Deal without social justice. And so I think that's a battle we need to fight together with workers, together with trade unions, together with civil society, and of course with the employers. And well, that should really be at the forefront of our electoral program and of our campaign. But I also think that moments like these, a Green Social Summit, where we all come together and discuss these topics, that's really key, that's really adamant. So my wish for today is that this will be the first Green Social Summit of many, many to come. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos nuestros ponentes. Creo que ha quedado...
Thank you very much to all speakers. I think it's clear that a different employment is